Is there anyone here who has not watched one of the versions of How the Grinch Stole Christmas? Right. It is such a beloved Christmas story that everyone, at least in our little community here in New Westminster, has been exposed to it in some way or another. And this beloved story was written in 1957 by Theodore Geisel, who we know as Dr. Seuss. And he wrote it in this rhyming verse, which is his style, and he illustrated the first book, all in black and white, except for the eyes of the Grinch, which were red. And he wrote it in October of 1957, and it was already a hit by Christmas. Can you imagine how fast that must have happened? And that was before the time of social media and things going viral. So it tells you a little about his gift of making a story come alive that is whimsical and has some really powerful, heartwarming messages for us. Since then, it's been created into at least 3 movies that are sort of true to the story with some artistic license. The first one was in 1966, and Boris Karloff was the voice of the character and the person who sings "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch." That was Boris Karloff. And then in 2000, the one that many of us feel is our favorites is the one with Jim Carrey as the Grinch. And then in 2018, there was another version which is fully animated as well, and it's also lovely. All 3 of them are amazing. And what they tell us is a story that moves us from bitterness to belonging. It's about a grumpy character, someone who has hated Christmas for 53 years, and he has just had enough of all these people down in Whoville at the bottom of the hill who are having such a good time and have so much fun at Christmas that he decides he's going to do something about it, and he's going to take their joy away. And so he decides that he is going to steal their joy by removing their food and their gifts and their decorations. And then on the day of Christmas, in the morning, he's waiting eagerly to hear their cries of, and I quote, "boo-hoo." And instead, he hears them doing what they always do every Christmas morning, standing close together and singing. And the Grinch has an awakening. He realizes that he may have been wrong about Christmas, and that maybe Christmas isn't about things that come from a store. Maybe it's about something more. And he shifts, transforms, and goes down and joins the community to the point that he not just joins, but is welcomed enough that he gets to carve the roast beast. And there are things we can learn from this story. The first is that we see that, let's just talk about what we see first. We see that the Grinch is a grouch. And we don't know why. And in fact, in the story, Dr. Seuss says, he hears some ideas about why he might be a grouch, but we don't know for sure. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch who lived just north of Whoville did not. The Grinch hated Christmas the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. Whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm, lighted windows below in their town. What do we see? We see a grouch, but we also see a grouch who is separated from the community. For whatever reason, they have separated themselves from the community, or the community has separated itself from this character because he's sour and miserable. And we don't know the reason. Depending on the movie that you see, there are a multitude of reasons. That he was left at an orphanage, that he decided to go and live on the mountain by himself, that he was laughed at by his teachers and fellow students. But those are all stories, because the truth is, we don't know the reason. It's not in the original. What we do know is that he's separate, that he's different. And there's a clue about the loneliness that is experienced by him when you hear he looks down from his cave at the warmth of the lights, that he's lonely. The thing is that we are told that whatever the reason, it's probably created a heart that's too small. And what happens when we have a heart that's too small? We start making decisions that aren't great for us. We do things that isolate us. We become more easily irritated. We sabotage our happiness just like he did. We want to steal other people's joy. Because if we can't have a fun time, why should anyone else? We don't like to see other people having a good time. And then we make up stories about why they're having a good time and how I can make it not so good. And we start believing those stories. And all these things do is separate us more from the community and the love that we are longing for. It's almost as if we engage in like a tragic strategy of, I'm miserable, and the way I'm going to fix it is to try and make everyone else miserable as well. And our lives then can be characterized by bitterness because it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? We are kind of grinchy. That wasn't the language I was going to use, but I'll use it. We can be grinchy, so then we make other people's lives miserable. Then they don't want to do anything with us, which makes us grinchy. And it's the circle that goes round and around, and it's like being on this hamster wheel, and how do you get off it? We get off it by remembering that we weren't born with hearts that were too small. And so let's look at what we can learn from the Grinch. From the Grinch himself, there are two things that I see that just stand out to me. The first is the courage he took to be curious. So he stands at the top of the mountain on Christmas morning and he's listening and hoping to hear boo-hoo, and he hears the sound of singing. Now, at that point, he has a crossroads choice to make. He can choose just to get really angry and go back into his cave and be miserable for the rest of the day, or he could do what he did, which is he started to be curious. He wondered why his strategy wasn't working. He wondered if the story that he told himself that was making his life miserable was actually not true. Here's what the story says. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. It takes courage to stop the hamster wheel and go, this isn't what I expected. What other idea could make more sense in this situation? It's really Unity's third principle, which is what thoughts are creating our experiences, and what if we changed those thoughts? And it takes courage, especially if you think about it. This man had been living this way, hating Christmas for 53 years, which, by the way, was the age of Dr. Seuss when he wrote this. Autobiographical? Who knows? But he's been hanging on to the story for 53 years. And he's willing now to look at it and question, which will shake the foundation of everything he believed. Courage. And then we see courage again, because what does he do? Having discovered that his whole premise was based on something that wasn't true, he also could have gone back into his cave and ruminated and thought about it and, maybe do something different next Christmas. But no. He did the other lesson in courage for us. He took the step to go and make things right. Big. How many of us have done things that have harmed people, have stolen their Christmas, figuratively, and realize that we've done something that's kind of not been cool, and we kind of slink away into our cave and fix it next time? How many of us are brave enough to go down the hill and knock on the doors and say, hey, I screwed up. Here's your stuff back, and will you forgive me? So those are the two things that we learn from the Grinch. The courage to look at the questions or at the stories that we've been told, and that we've been telling ourselves, and that we've been believing, and that we've been creating our whole Grinchiness based on. question it. And then having discovered that it is not what we thought it was, to have the courage then to go and try and make it right. And be willing to accept the consequences, because there will be times when you get to the door and you say, hey, I messed up, that the person on the other slams the door right back in your face. So it's a genuine amount of courage that we see with the Grinch. Let's move to the people of Whoville then. We see in the people of Whoville, even the word who I think is so awesome, because who basically means that all of us, right? We're all who's. But what do you hear and see from them? We discover that they know that Christmas is not about the gifts or the food or the decorations. That those things are like the icing and the cherries and the decorations on the cake, but that the cake is the part that matters. And so you can take those other things away, but at your core, Christmas is not about those outer trappings. They are just the fun things that give us an avenue to celebrate gifts and decorations and fun and songs and food. So we see this resilience from them. And they do what they always do, and there is some value to that idea too, isn't there? The idea of tradition and ritual that help us at a time when things may kind of be unexpected to us. They know they come together. They hold hands. They sing. Resilience. Coming together, knowing they are in a community. Resilience. And a knowledge of their values, which is, it's not about that outside stuff. And then the other thing we see with the people of Whoville is a generosity of spirit, which is rare. Because I know that if someone had stolen my Christmas stuff, and I woke up to a bare and empty house with there wasn't enough food even for the mouse, that if someone comes the next day and says, hey, I kind of messed up, I'm sorry about that, I might be like, give me my stuff, see ya. But that's not what happened with the Grinch. And the Grinch is different. He looks different from them. He's green, they aren't. He's a different shape than they are. There's difference and sameness. And yet, he is invited back in. Extraordinary forgiveness. Extraordinary tenderness of heart and openness of heart. And so at the end of the story, we realize that the biggest gift of all is not just what they did with each other when they found out their gifts were stolen and they sang. That Christmas wasn't bought at a store, sure. But it wasn't even about holding hands and singing around the Christmas tree in the center of the town. Christmas is about welcoming in people who've been separated. When we open our hearts, we see things more clearly. And it doesn't matter whether your heart starts out 2 sizes too small and grows 3 sizes larger, as the Grinch happened. Or maybe the people of Whoville who already had hearts that were perfectly adequate in size. Don't you think their hearts grew that day too? When we act like the Grinch and our pattern reactions are tragic strategies which turn people away from us and turn us away from other people. Let's move from bitterness to belonging. Have the courage to hear and consider your assumptions, our assumptions, and patterns, and question them. Let's have the courage to change our story. Let's have the courage to reconnect with the people who we've separated ourselves from. And when we're the townspeople, let us stay true to our values so that no one else gets to steal our joy. And let us have generous hearts that are willing to be open, willing to be kind. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. This Christmas, may each of our hearts grow 3 sizes. And may our hearts be light rather than tight, so we can bring toys and food and joys to everyone we meet and move all of our experiences from bitterness to belonging. I bless you.